Well, howdy, folks. Good morning. Welcome to the Blue Gamer Bluecast Morning Show. I'm your host, Adam Blue, 30 plus year video game enthusiast and industry analyst. And today for, what is it? May 18th, 2026. I'll run through the latest gaming news, what I've been playing, etc., etc. Hope everyone had a good weekend. I did. It wasn't as active and crazy as it's been lately, so I got to chill, play some games. I'll talk about that here shortly. Other than that, I'm trying to think if there's anything major or interesting game-wise. I mean, I think we're going to touch on some news that's pretty interesting, but yeah, I don't think anything crazy came up over the weekend. Yeah. So let's jump into what I've been playing. This is pretty interesting. So, first of all, I've been playing Star Fox Assault. GameCube using, emulating. I'm primarily using Dolphin, yeah. I like to use the emulation station as kind of the front end for all my emulation, but sometimes when it's working with other emulators, actually this gets me to what I was doing this weekend. So, actually, I wonder if I should start there. So before I jump into the whole thing of Star Fox, let me tell you what got me to do this emulation. So it originally started where I wanted to emulate Star Fox 64. I mean, I can do that. I already can. And I think I was telling you guys I was going to be playing it on this, but I got to admit, a game like Star Fox is very uncomfortable with something this size, at least for my hands, because like there's a lot of like that left, right, and then so you're kind of like, because of the size, I'm like having to then, what I don't know what the actual word, there's a word for it, where I'm like contracting my muscles like together just to like claw grip to get what I want. So using a standard full-size controller, I have a much more relaxed grip where I can press the buttons I need to. Playing Star Fox 64 night and day. And if you think about the N64 controller, it was a little unwieldy in the fact that it was a little bit bigger, but I think that lent for that better, more relaxed grip. So this is kind of going back to the controls. At the end of the day, the best controls are going to have the best gameplay, and I mean the feeling of what you're holding. So yeah, no more portable Star Fox. You just can't get the same feel. And it reminds me when I would play the 3DS games. Because as fun as it was I had to buy the grip for my 3DS in order to really spend the time playing those games. Anyway, so I used Claude Cowork to view all of the files on my computer across multiple hard drives to then consolidate my ROMs, my emulators, all into one folder structure and labeled. Also delete duplicate ROMs. And then I even used the Retro Achievements API to be able to compare the hashes of those ROMs to the hashes of my ROMs and to remove any ROMs that don't have any Retro Achievements compatibility. So, and it's not like I need every game right now. It's more of as I want to play a game that you can't get anymore, I'll look up what the hash is to get the right ROM so I can log my gaming. It's a lot of fun doing this because then this kind of goes to my next point. It was very easy for me to launch Emulation Station, have access to everything I need and everything work, in terms of achievements, compatible games, remove the bloat. I think I removed over 93 gigs on that hard drive. Well, total on my computer because it was spread across different hard drives. Even if it would find, it was like, oh, you have an instance of a PCSX2 installed on C and D. The C one has the latest files. The one on D doesn't. So it knew, okay, we'll merge what we can, keeping the one on the C drive as the source, but then also moving it from C to D. Anyway, it was a fantastic weekend of consolidating my retro game collection, the emulation collection. Nothing like Switch. Like I had some things from Switch I downloaded for testing, even for playing 60 FPS, but I've just deleted those since now. A lot of that on the Switch 2. For instance, Tears of the Kingdom runs fantastic on Switch 2. I don't need it on my PC anymore, once I decided to go through that. Same with Bayonetta 3. I ended up buying that, but doesn't run as good still. I can't believe I bought Bayonetta 3 and I haven't bothered playing through that. Wow. Anyway, so it was just really neat at the end of the day that I got everything all cleaned up and consolidated. And then I started with, okay, there was a few things I was doing, like, what, 15th was Friday. And then I think I did play Star Fox 64, but I also jumped into River Raid on the Atari 2600. This is some of my earliest video game memories is playing a game like River Raid. And it was interesting to go back to it after all that time. Now, maybe I had jumped into it here and there before on a collection thing or something, but never really gave time to it. It's interesting. It says I only played 7 minutes. I feel like it was way more than that, but I scored 5. It's cool to get achievements from Atari 26. Oh, I didn't have it. From Atari 2600 games. Like, again, those were some of the earliest games I was playing. And not that, and again, it's more of the Sega Genesis that really got me into gaming. But there are things from the Atari 2600, those games that have elements that have then evolved. Pitfall was another one that I really enjoyed. And then I went to T-Mech on the 32X. Again, I'm seeing a pattern here where the minutes, the time spent's lower than it should have been, but I'll just go with it for now. T-Mech is a game I had on the 32X, and it was always too tough. I didn't understand what was going on. And playing it now, it's actually super easy, and I do understand what's going on. What's happening is the game looks and plays rough because they were trying to do 3D in 2D, because the 32X allowed for 2D effects, artwork, whatever you call it, 2D assets to have more conducive, what am I trying to say? Consistent screen time where you could see everything even though it looked odd because it was 2D. So because of that, it's rough to play. But I think nowadays it's like I'm looking at it through, even though I'm not a game dev, through that game dev research line of thinking where, oh, I see what they're doing. I see what the background is. I see this rotation of these objects. I understand what's happening. And from that, I can then take advantage of the gameplay mechanics. And so I think I went 2 straight rounds winning. It's funny. It's more of just a multiplayer arena game. It was a lot of fun. More than I grasped it when I was playing it on the 32X back in the 90s. And then I jumped into some virtual tennis. Again, this is me testing the new emulation stuff, the way I fixed it up. Virtual tennis is a lot of fun. I remember playing that on Dreamcast. The graphics looked amazing, but it's fun, and it's still fun today. It still looks modern. The Dreamcast holds up nicely. But Star Fox 64 is the real winner this weekend, I think. I played about 2 hours and 34 minutes of it. I went through it twice because it's run based, right? It's one of those where there's multiple paths to get to the end, and I was able to do 2 of them. And Star Fox 64, I gotta say, holds up so well for as it could appear to be rough in terms of trying to pull off the graphics it did on the N64. But then you realize, no, they did a really good job. It's like Nintendo really understands limitations and how to work around them. Because playing Star Fox 64, I remember the first playthrough, I was getting myself destroyed. Second playthrough, I was destroying. It felt so good. And then I loved coming across all the secrets. And it adds so much replay value. And the music, I remember every single song on every single stage. So I hadn't played Star Fox 64 to the degree I did this weekend since the 90s when it first came out. I think, yeah, on the 3DS, I might have jumped in Nintendo Switch Online for a second, but to really sit there and play Star Fox 64, it still is a modern, amazing game. Everything about it feels great. Love it. Can't wait to play some more and get the other paths, because I remember all the little secrets I was discovering and like, wow, it's so crazy how much this game has to it. It's pretty amazing. And I was talking about this the other day with like Mario 3, how Nintendo's always been ahead, and I think we take that for granted, that Nintendo's always been able to put out quality stuff. So I'll be jumping more into that. Hey, Jib Killex, good to see you. All right, Tasmania, I was like, well, what's an obscure Genesis game that I can remember in my mind being excited about? and it was Tasmania, and boy, does that game not hold up. Now, maybe I need to give it more time. It says a minute here, but it was way more than a minute. The first level, and it's full of traps that you have to memorize. That's not my type of game. It almost reminds me of, the older 2600 games or NES games I was talking about, where gaming didn't really become something to me until Sonic the Hedgehog. So yeah, Tasmania looks great though. It does look great for what it is for its time. And the other thing I did was I jumped into Castlevania: The Adventure Rebirth just because, and I want to say I have a video of me playing through that here on the channel because it's such a great Castlevania game. But when I had played it originally, I never had the retro achievements because I had the wrong file. So this is an example of what I got out of using Claude to review my file up against the hashes through the retro achievements API. I had to get the right file for Castlevania: The Adventure Rebirth. I was able to find it, so I've got that loaded up. So I'll probably play through that again here soon to get the achievements because I love that game. I could just play it over and over. And then as a test, I jumped back into Mobile Suit Gundam, Gundam vs. Zeta Gundam. This is what I'm doing for the Gundam Explain channel. But because I had to transfer and consolidate the files and everything onto one drive into one folder, I was like, well, I hope I have everything for Mobile Suit Gundam, and I do. I was able to log in. My save was there. Perfect. So once I realized, okay, this new emulation structure is working, I appreciate Claude helping with that. I was like, well, let me jump into something else I really want to play, and that is Star Fox Assault. It's one of those that, again, I think the GameCube is full of this. That was the time in my life I had already moved out, I think, right? Yeah, I think by that time I was, on my own out of high school, moved out. And so I wasn't necessarily completing every game. Like I remember Metroid Prime I completed. I made sure I completed that. But I remember Luigi's Mansion, I never beat that. WarioWare, well, not WarioWare, but Wario, whatever they called that one. The treasure game, or was it Platinum? Sure, it was Treasure. And then the Star Fox Assault was one of those where I had started it. Here's the thing. Star Fox Assault is fun, but it is nowhere near as tight as Star Fox 64. It's still fun though, but as I'm playing it, I can feel the roughness that would not have been allowed in the N64 version. Now that's separate from graphical things like frame rate. I guess that's really it, or how something looks. It's more about the moment-to-moment gameplay. The space stuff is cool in Star Fox Assault, and while I enjoy the ground, the tank, the on-foot sections, it's not as tight as the Landmaster in Star Fox 64. Not anywhere near as tight. And even running around as Fox doesn't feel as interesting as it would be in a Landmaster. Or the submarine. I think that's in Star Fox 64. So while Star Fox Assault is fun, I see why I didn't bother finishing it when I had played it before. I don't know if I had rented it or I owned it, and there were so many things I owned I never played. But I like Star Fox Zero better than Star Fox Assault because playing Zero, I was pulled in, even with the gamepad thing you had to do sometimes. It broke it up just enough and not too much. Yeah, that's the thing with Star Fox Assault. It's like I'm not doing as much space battles as I'd like to so far. That's just an hour and 30 minutes in. Like, what are some of the Astrobuilt? Complete Mission 5 in story mode. Complete Mission 4. Okay. Complete Mission 4 with all your allies safe. Well, that didn't happen later on, let me tell you. Yeah, there's still more I got to do, but I don't feel like I'm flying around as much as I would like. With the name Star Fox Assault, it really is just a pure action game. But there's a reason it's just not as tight. It's not as good as a Star Fox game could be. So, but I still want to go through and beat it. And so here's what's been fun about it is, again, the way I've set up my emulation, my ROMs, and the way I have, I'm playing on my computer, but then I go into the living room, turn on the TV, turn on my Apple TV, and it has Moonlight, where I am then just screen sharing and audio sharing, controller sharing, mic, PC. So I've been playing Star Fox 64 and Star Fox Assault in the living room on the big screen to really get that console home, gameplay experience. I mean, when Star Fox 64 first came out, I was playing it on a 32-inch TV. That's not as big as, but I think back when it came out, that was like a typical normal size of a TV in a living room until the big rear projection HD TVs came out. And so yeah, sitting on the couch playing Star Fox, it's a lot of fun. This was a cool weekend to do all that. Jim Killix, those were the main issues the game had, the ground combat section controls, yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. It kind of broke up the gameplay, and then I was like, oh, I got to do this. And then even the Landmaster controls are not as good as they were in the first one. But, I'll let it slide. They're trying cool new things, and we're getting a new Star Fox. I'm so excited about that. So, anyway, so that is, I guess, me talking about what I did this weekend in terms of the emulation and ROM cleanup on my computer, consolidate, make sure retro achievements work with the games I have. It's pretty fun. All right, let's jump into different news. So this is cool. Sonic the Hedgehog 4 movie wraps up filming with a Metal Sonic reveal. So, yeah, cool picture. I love, all I can say is it looks exactly like he does in the games. I think that's the one thing that the Sonic movie franchise has done, even though sometimes the story and the human elements aren't necessarily stuff we recognize from the games. They do enough, just like the new Mario movie, or how they're doing Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, to make it really appear like the game. I think people want that. All right. Okay, Nintendo president hits they're preparing to continue support for original Switch. So this is something interesting that has to do with, well, let me read it first. Nintendo Switch has a ridiculously large install base, and not everyone has shifted over to the newer Nintendo Switch 2, which has recently been announced to be getting a price increase. Speaking to investors, Nintendo President Shuntaro Furukawa has hinted to them that it plans to maintain support for the Nintendo Switch while consumers dither about whether to upgrade. Nintendo Patents Watch says that they suspect that Nintendo's acquisition of Shiver Entertainment and their investment in Forever Entertainment were part of the plan to further extend original Nintendo Switch support. It is important to expand the entire software business instead of focusing only on Switch 2. Encourage people to transition to Nintendo Switch 2 at their own pace. So it's interesting because I think the Nintendo Switch 2 has sold very well. But I think Nintendo, because how these corporations work and the money, blah, blah, blah. There's like this expectation that it needs to be selling so much more. But then there's the fact that the Switch 1 sold very well, and there's a lot of people playing Switch 1 and having fun. It makes me wonder what other Switch 2 games might end up being backported to the first Switch, if that's even going to take place. If we look at Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, that was Switch and Switch 2. I think there's potential there for them to do that to other games. I mean, look at Tears of the Kingdom being on Switch 1. Could Donkey Kong Bonanza be on Switch 1? I don't know. They said no, even though it was made primarily on the Switch 1, and I think it had to do with the amount of how you could just, the ground, you can manipulate the ground, the world all around you. I don't know if there's a technical limitation there, but I kind of see what they're getting at. It's like there's so many people already on this Switch 1. And it is kind of crazy to think, because it's almost like Nintendo was delaying the release of the Switch 2 because the Switch 1 was doing fine. And I think they're in a tough place. It's good that they have the Switch 2. It's good to support the Switch 1. But if you look in the past, it's always been that way. In a way, where I remember when the Super Nintendo came out, the Nintendo was still supported for a long time. And I think that's cool. I think that's okay. I think console manufacturers, platform holders should always anticipate that. And I think that's then where the backwards compatibility really works. Because, as people were going to move to the new Xbox consoles, there was way more backwards compatibility than any of the other consoles. I mean, at first when the PS3 came out, it had the PS1 emulation, PS2 emulation, so they actually nailed that. But over time, Sony started stripping that stuff away, and Xbox was adding more of that stuff in. Nintendo has done a great job with the Switch 1 to Switch 2 overall, for playing Switch 1 games on Switch 2 or whatever. Even though they kind of look bad and then they require like a paid upgrade to fix that, even though some companies were releasing it for free or would just do it at a system level. I don't know, just very interesting times when it comes to all that. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. Okay, Batman Arkham Knight joins Xbox Play Anywhere, and more major titles could be on the way. So this is really cool that retroactively, Batman Arkham Knight got the Play Anywhere, and I guess they're showing these other games that are getting Play Anywhere. Onimusha, that's pretty cool. It's Capcom. I'm a huge fan of Play Anywhere. I'll buy games usually if they have the Play Anywhere because, especially Crimson Desert, great example of like playing that in the living room, playing it here on my PC, and then the ROG Ally. I have a video of me playing on the ROG Ally, and it runs great. So, when I look for, in the age of not having physical, your physical games, I look for what gives me the most accessibility. That's Play Anywhere. So, anyway, I hope this means we're going to be hearing about more Play Anywhere titles. Okay, so I was looking at games coming out this week. As crazy as it is, like, well, for one, I do want to play that Forza Horizon. Probably not going to play for it long, just for a little bit and have fun. But it's this Yoshi and the Mysterious Book. I tend to play the Yoshi games, although they do this interesting thing where on the surface it seems like a very childlike game, and it kind of is, but once you get deeper into the systems further in the game, it starts getting very challenging. Like that last, and then you'll see tweets, and I forget the guy's name, that will complain like, oh, this is just a kid's game. And it's like, I know Nintendo kind of does that on the surface to kind of like invite, but once you get deep into the Yoshi game, especially the last one, it can have some challenging areas and ways to like collect everything. So this is the 21st. So between that and then the James Bond game dropping soon, I think I need to choose between one of these to be my main full price purchase. And I don't know. Don't sleep on these Yoshi games. They're like classic platforming gameplay with amazing artwork and usually some pretty interesting mechanics, not anywhere else. All right. Okay. Hamster planning on exceedingly large amount of console archive series games. So I talked about this last week where there's like the arcade archives, console archives. I guess the idea of the arcade archives is taking things that were like on PlayStation, for instance, that you can't rely on Sony to release again, but other companies have the rights. And so they just call it console archives because it will be a PlayStation game, for instance, on Switch. Okay, so Arcade Archives had a target of 800, and we're already done over 500. For Console Archives, we want to beat that. Actually, now we feel like 800 titles should just be a point we pass along the way, just in terms of the number of titles. There are a lot more home console games and arcade games, so we want to make a series where we can go further. It really doesn't have too much to that. I would love to see if they have a list of the expectations. Well, I guess they can't really say what they're going to be releasing. This looks awesome. Never played this. I think we were talking about that before. And this looks great because I remember it's like, hey, isn't that a Gundam? Not a Gundam, but a Rick Dom. So it's this, and I didn't even pick it up. Yeah, I'm looking at this right here. Console Archives. Roga Armor Force. And it says Wolf Fang. So maybe they're the same thing, but I know I have that on wish list on Steam. Anyway, this looks great. Something I would want to play just with everything else I kind of forgot, but I got to remember that I want to check that out. It is 1 to 2 players. So, okay. Moving on, fan favorite PS3 adventure games might be revived on PS5. So this seems to be more about Infamous. So I don't know if you guys played Infamous. It was pretty fun. I played the first one, and then I played like the two later ones, Last Light and Second Son. I don't think I played Infamous 2, but I wouldn't mind jumping back in to play the first Infamous. It was an interesting time when that came out, where like these open world games were like starting to shine and do their own thing. Yeah, I guess that's really all I got for that one. And I think that's it for the news. And actually, we're kind of near time. Well, let me see if there's anything interesting, anything else that's interesting that has come up. But that looks cool. Now, I'm not going to jump into a game just because I won't have too much time. But I guess the main takeaway for today's Blue Gamer is about the how you can really leverage Claude in a way to view, clean up your local, I guess, file structure, specifically for cleaning up ROMs, emulators. Over the years, I know for me, I'll be downloading ROMs, some are incompatible with retro achievements, or maybe I have the wrong cores for something, or I have duplicates. That happens a lot. But it was nice for Claude to kind of go through and do all that, save space, have things consolidated in a single area. The next step, and it advised that it could help me of that once we get ready, is the cloud saving. Now, years ago, I was using something called SyncThing, which is really cool. You get a lot of, just the way it works in general, you get a lot of flexibility with it, but it would sometimes just not work, or sometimes just fail. Especially on my emulators, either Linux or Android, you could still use SyncThing to look at certain. So what I was doing was syncing my ROM file structure. The thing is, the saves might be within those folders, so I'm asking it to sync everything. And I think the play here is, within each emulator, kind of specify where the save file would go, and it would be in its own folder, and that's what I would be then syncing. And I think that's the play. Apparently, some emulators, and I forget which ones, plan to have that built in, where you can sync files, saves, whatever. I think that's the future. In fact, I think the future is more of, I'll have a local instance of my emulation library, or a cloud instance. That's mine. And then I could be on any device and play, since you can kind of do that already with modern consoles, right? I can stream Xbox, I can stream PlayStation and play, and it's fine. And I think, having your emulation or your emulated library somewhere that you can then access anywhere with the saves, I think that's the future. So, all right, guys, I'm going to head out. That was a lot of fun. I'll be back tomorrow on the Gundam Explained show. I might talk a little bit about Hathaway, the new movie that came out. I do have a review up on Gundam Explained for that. But anyway, guys, I'm going to head out. Have a good one. We'll talk later. See y'all.